In my most fearful moments, and I'm wondering if you have ever felt this too, is that you were just being carried, like divinely carried in moments that you look back and say, I would never have had the strength to do it myself, but I just felt like I was carried. And where I started was I was actually carried to a retreat center right by my house. I was carried there. I would never have gone there on my own. But somebody I bumped into talked to me about this place. And I literally, it's like my car drove me there. And what I found there was the thing that changed my whole entire life trajectory. And that was a labyrinth.
Elaine, welcome to the Point of Impact.
Thank you so much for having me, Aaron. It's really an honor to be here with you.
Well, I'm just so excited to get into this conversation with you. I've been reading or listening to your book, and uh, it's there are quite a few parallels with a retreat I did right after my injury, after I lost my eyesight. Um, it's called the Warrior Warrior Path retreat at Boulder Crest in the Blue Ridge Mountains. But it was lots of meditation, different forms of meditation, and quite a bit of getting quiet. So, uh, first, why don't we start with what do you mean by get quiet? And I know it's not just turn the TV off or silence your phone.
That's right. Getting quiet is about creating space in a world where there's so much that offers us to fill space in our life. This is actually getting rid of and creating the space that we need to do two things: to rest and to reflect. That is what get quiet means to me.
Okay. And I know it's an especially difficult challenge nowadays where everything's competing for your attention. There's, all the chirping and buzzing that's going on in your pocket, the television, the AI echo docs, and there are notifications and everything trying to create, I guess, disharmony. And beyond that, you have your everyday lives. Uh, Not only does that create this disharmony, but then it's difficult to actually find that space. So, beyond that, though, on top of it, is that often, and I know I felt this myself, it's like a misalignment with purpose and meaning, and I've had to come, recenter, re-zero, and get quiet, and it's taken almost drastic steps to you quiet all the noise. And this is coming from a guy who's totally blind and totally deaf. It's not hard to actually create silence, uh, but it goes far behind that.
I appreciate all that you've just said. I'll take one part of that and say that this isn't about a traditional sitting in a meditative cross-legged state of silence, although that is a great option as well. I'm talking about, and what you have experienced, is the most difficult thing we can do. It takes so much attention. It takes so much diligence. It takes commitment to want to know the age-old question, and that is, who am I? How did I get here? What is my purpose? What is my soul's calling? And this is the work, the inner work. We know that there's a lot of outer available to us that can cause distraction from what is the most important thing, and that is honoring this one God-given life. And so this is the inner work that you do to honor this life, to know why you're here, so that you can leave not only a legacy behind, but I believe there's also another legacy, and that is your soul's legacy.
You've been on your own journey, so to speak, and discovery. And earlier on, you had the would be, I guess, the picture perfect life on the surface, but you were suffering uh, behind the scenes. Can you tell me a little bit about that? As a give us a little background on uh, or the what led you to you know, getting quiet, or the necessity for finding that quiet space.
My life had become so chaotic with the choices that I had made in my life. I was living on autopilot. I was living totally unconscious, and things piled up. And so now I didn't have any of that space anymore inside of me. My body wasn't healthy. My brain wasn't healthy. Mentally, emotionally, I wasn't healthy. Spiritually, I was disconnected totally. I was educated. I had a wonderful career as a dental hygienist. I had sat with over 40,000 patients one-on-one, which taught me really my truest life lessons about health and wellness, what makes somebody really happy, what creates true peace. And so, but my personal life was struggling. I had chosen to marry a man and was married for 13 years. We had two beautiful boys, but it was a very, very unhealthy relationship. So I chose to complete that marriage, and I became a single mom overnight. In that marriage, I had everything. I lived in the lap of luxury, really. But it wasn't worth the nights of worry, of suffering, of my body beginning to break down. It wasn't worth it anymore. And my kids deserved the healthiest mother that I could be. And so I made a really difficult decision. And a lot of people are faced with this every day around this country, to complete their marriage and start over again. And that's where I started. And I had to get quiet because my life had become so loud and so chaotic that I needed to create space to get clear about my next steps. I had two small children to take care of. I had my health to take care of. I had a career that I was responsible for, just like any person. But I needed now a healthier direction. I needed now to make different choices for myself. And I didn't know what those were, but I knew that I had to start somewhere. And that was get into a quiet place and start to reflect on what just happened these last 13 years in your marriage, and take responsibility and move forward in a much more clear, powerful way.
And I definitely want to talk to you about all of that, like how you made that choice and what you did. First, was there a catalyst moment that led you to take this decision, or was it a buildup accumulated over time to where you just couldn't couldn't take that chaos any longer?
I had a patient one day in my dental chair. His name is Jeff. And he was given about 3 months to live. He was going through stage 4 cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And cancer patients would come to me because the chemotherapy would really create a lot of disease in their mouths. So I sat with many, many people who were dying in my almost 30 years in the career. Jeff came that day and we sat. We both knew that would probably be our last time together after 6 years of me treating him. I said, Jeff, what have you learned and what would be a message that you would want to share? We were comfortable that way together, that I could ask him that. He said, Elaine, don't wait to do what you really want to do. It was so simple, Aaron, yet so profound. And it caught me right in the moment of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of getting quiet, is asking people the right questions, because we are all messengers for one another. Getting quiet is creating space, but it's also creating consciousness, being conscious and aware of every interaction that you have on a daily basis. You know, there's no mistake why you and I are here right now together today. And that goes for everybody. If you can just walk through your day being aware and conscious instead of on autopilot, life speaks to us. And that day, Jeff spoke to me. And that was the catalyst that said, I'm not waiting anymore. I'm not putting my life on hold anymore. I'm not being treated poorly anymore.
That's pretty profound. I have interviewed a couple times Doc G, Jordan Grumet, who was a hospice doctor, and has written a couple books, Taking Stock and The Purpose Code. And of course, there's nothing like a conversation with somebody who's terminal to put your own life in perspective. So you make this decision that something's got to change, but that can be terrifying, and to make a dramatic life change, at the very least, very inconvenient. If you built yourself this life, and even divorce, right? It's not a relationship that you can withstand. But then again, there's like all this finances and schools, and it's I know it's not a good reason to stay together, but it certainly plays a factor in the decision-making progress, and it's a lot of times why people will drag their feet. So how did you, I guess, find that space, find that quiet to really answer the questions that you needed to answer?
Well, just going back to the fear of change and uncertainty. My dad, who passed away 7 years ago, with his whole family by his side, it was a beautiful moment. He would say to us kids, it can be the fear of the unknown, or it can be the fun of the unknown. The choice is obvious. And so I grew up with parents and mentors that were really strong, and I'm so grateful for that, because those were my guiding lights in my most fearful moments during that time of change.
Hmm.
And what I did was, I didn't really consciously start anywhere, Aaron. I think that what happened was this spirit, this life force carried me out and delivered me into places with people and certain environments where I was just guided. I really feel in my most in my most fearful moments, and I'm wondering if you have ever felt this too, is that you were just being carried, like divinely carried in moments that you look back and say, I would never have had the strength to do it myself, but I just felt like I was carried. And where I started was I was actually carried to a retreat center right by my house. I was carried there. I would never have gone there on my own. But somebody I bumped into talked to me about this place, and I literally, it's like my car drove me there. And what I found there was the thing that changed my whole entire life trajectory. And that was a labyrinth.
A labyrinth. You know, I've like that retreat I mentioned. I got to walk a labyrinth for the first time after going blind. Would you tell me, describe for me the labyrinth you walked?
A labyrinth is, you can look at it like a formation in the ground. It's a 4,000-year-old formation that the ancients knew there was something special. If you walked this pathway, it almost transports you into a portal where you can connect within, where you can connect with your soul, with your soul's voice. It is not a maze. If you would look at it, you would think that looks confusing. I don't want to even get near it. But it's not. It's one way in and one way out. The paths traverse, just like the paths that wind in our own lives. It's truly a metaphor for getting quiet, from starting from the outside world and walking the first steps inward to the center of the labyrinth, which is really walking the path to the center of ourselves. Now, the very first time I got to this labyrinth, I live in Arizona. So I'm walking this labyrinth in circles in the desert thinking, I've just about gone crazy. What am I doing? But the very first day, I heard clearly my soul's voice, which means that anybody who's living a life right now, who feels like their life is out of control and loud, and they feel lost or they feel stuck, if you walk a labyrinth, the way that I have found that it can create so much harmony in your body that you can get so still and hear the messages that your soul needs to share with you. And that day I heard the words surrender. Of all the messages that needed to come through that day when I finally got quiet, it was to surrender.
And what did that tell you?
I didn't know at first because my automatic negative thinking mind at the time said to me, there's no way in hell I can surrender. If I do, my whole life is going to fall apart. You know, we hold so much as human beings. We hold so much. We hold our own emotions, the emotions of others, experiences that were negative, but we haven't processed anything around those. We're holding so much. And at that moment, I was like, I have to hold it all to keep it together. I went back to my car that day. I turned on the radio. And the person on the radio was talking about, of all things, surrender. I had an immediate synchronistic experience that confirmed that whatever was going on in the labyrinth was now mirroring my outside life. And it was the most beautiful experience in that moment for me, because it gave me hope that there was something that I couldn't see, that I could have faith in. And I believe that there's a world of the unseen. And I'm not, say, a woo-woo person. I'm a very practical person. But there are forces in the unseen that are there to help us. Call it our intuition, call it our spirit guide team, call it God, call it the universe, whatever you want to call it. It was there for me that day when I desperately needed answers in the most difficult time in my life.
What did the act of surrendering, how did that manifest itself? How did you take action to surrender? Or what did you do after this first labyrinth walk?
Well, well, I would say that people would used to say, well, she's just a know-it-all. She tells you what to do at every stop. And that was my first thing. I just stopped. I stopped trying to fix everybody. I stopped trying to tell everyone exactly how to do everything. And I started to trust. And I think this is the key word in terms of surrendering your control. You just start to trust not only yourself more, but you trust other people, that they can take care of their own lives and that you don't have to be responsible for them. And so I bit by bit began to realize what this meant for me. And I felt immediate inner peace when I took the steps to be awake enough to see where I could surrender things.
You know, when I kind of came to my catalyst moment, I was in an unhealthy relationship. And having been injured, I came to the realization that I could no longer deploy to escape the relationship. I was stuck there and had to decide what to do. I had to face my problems head on. Of course, it was the added challenge of being blind, and there was many other complications, but I knew that something had to change. When you went on this path of getting quiet so that you could find that space, communicate with your soul, and find alignment, you talk about in your book the 7 circuits. There's a practice for getting quiet. Can you describe this process?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I needed to heal. I needed to heal my life. And walking these labyrinth paths helped me heal so that I could discover who I really am. And when I went to the labyrinth and heard messages, I would write and write and write. I have been journaling and keeping a diary since I was 16 years old. And so I would write everything I heard, every message I heard. And after a few years, I looked at everything that I had and I was like, oh my gosh, I actually have a method, a very holistic method to healing, a very holistic method to being able to connect inward. It's such an elusive, place. People don't know where is within. How do you know when you've gotten there? How do you get there? So the very first path, the very first thing that I focused on to get that healing was to heal my body. And I went down a big rabbit hole of how my body works. I got blood tests, lab work, genetic testing. did deep dives on everything I was putting in my body, food, supplements, what I was drinking, what I was eating, medications I was taking. And just what that revealed alone changed my life. Because I was just trying to get to the truest me. I was trying to feel the most authentic self. Who was I? And when you are on medications that mess you up mentally, like I was with thyroid medications, you're not your true self. When you're eating junk and sugar and things that make you feel sluggish, you're not your true self. And that was the very first, I say, rabbit hole I went down, because there was no stone left unturned when it came to my health. And that's how you start to truly heal your whole life, is by knowing your body, being able to tune into your body and know what your body needs. And a lot of people, we are so disconnected from our physical bodies. That was the first step that I took, Aaron.
After these messages, we'll be right back. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this episode, Extraordinary Delights, EODFudge.com. Extraordinary Delights is a disabled veteran, family-owned small business making handcrafted fudge and other sweet treats for the chocolate-loving patriots just like you. Go to EODFudge.com and check out some of our delicious flavors like triple threat chocolate with or without walnuts, mint dark chocolate, strawberry and creamy white chocolate, or my personal favorite, American Pick-Me-Up, an all-American version of tiramisu. While you're there, go to the apparel store and check out our awesome t-shirts, polos, and the baddest tactical apron on the market. You see me wear on the TikTok show, Aaron Hale's Cook Without Looking. So, right now, go over to EODFudge.com and pick out some fudge, other sweet treats for that patriot in your life with a sweet tooth. That's EODFudge.com. EODFudge.com. And now, back to the show. It's so true. We're not very active. There's a great book, author's name's Easter, The Comfort Crisis. And it just talks about, he goes into the backwoods of Alaska for 33 days. And I wouldn't recommend just up and doing that. But it's a reminder that we are almost always nowadays either laying down or sitting down. We get out of bed and we get into a car and sit down. And then we get to work and we sit down. And we do that all day long. And we put these super convenient, highly produced, processed foods. And when we're not feeling good, instead of changing that, we start taking medicine. We medicate to patch the wound. I think hopefully we're going to start seeing some changes there with food and medicine, and it's a long journey to change the culture. But the first thing you can do is change yourself. So you started taking action with your own physical well-being. What else?
Once I got that under control, the next path to getting to the real truth of who I am was focusing and being aware of my environment. Was there clutter? Who were the people sharing space with me? Were there outside storage units that I had stuff stored in and didn't even know where the key was, but was paying monthly for that storage? That's all the clutter. Who were my friends? Who were people that really were supporting me versus sabotaging me? Who was I in close relationship with? Who was sleeping in my bed? I looked at everything. And I had to clear and clean out not only that first path of the body, but then I had to clean and clear out my environment.
You
As
cleaned house, huh?
I cleaned house. Yeah. This is not a journey of the faint of heart, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're listening and you're like, okay, I'm on path 2 now, this is too much for me. Please know that it takes courage. It takes commitment to wanting to live your most truest life. And also know that it took me a decade to do all of these paths. And that's why I wanted to put it in a book so that it doesn't take you 10 years. So it sounds like a lot of you having to do a lot. And it is true, especially if you have a lot of clutter to clear in all aspects of your life. Because the third path after cleaning your environment,
Mm-hmm.
it is the longest in the labyrinth. It's the outer ring of the labyrinth. So metaphorically, it's the longest path you will walk inside the labyrinth. And that is cleaning and clearing out of the mind. All the thoughts on repeat, all the rumination, all the negative thoughts, all the listening to outside thoughts that clutter the mind and take up space. There are 3 places that we can spend our time. We can spend our time with ourselves. We can spend our time online, and we can spend our time with others in person. So this really is, those are the aspects of what is coming into our life in terms of being supportive or cluttering.
Well, I understand uh, reducing the clutter in your life physically. I mean, I've got 3 young boys. At any given moment, this house looks like a hoarder's home, just with stuff piled all over the place. So I understand. I'd literally just fill a box with random junk on the countertop and throw it away from time to time. Uh, but how do you go about decluttering your mind?
A lot of books. A lot of books to read. That was another rabbit hole for me. Because if you think about thoughts, we usually have the same thoughts every day. And when you think about, say, thoughts as pieces of garbage, it's like a garbage truck going from house to house in your neighborhood and in your town and in your city and even in your state, collecting all those thoughts, collecting all that garbage. And imagine now that garbage truck is completely full. In fact, it's overflowing. In fact, that driver can't even drive safely anymore. This is your mind in that state. This is your body. This is your life in that state. So how can you empty out that truck? And the very first thing I did was I learned how to meditate, because that really does help release unwanted thoughts. Not only unwanted thoughts, but thoughts that continue to bubble up, that you really don't have control over.
Now, this labyrinth you walk, this is a form of meditation in itself. Do you do other forms of meditation?
This I do. So I've been doing transcendental meditation for 20 years. And it's very supportive. It's what really helped me start to clear my mind and move in a healthy direction mentally. But it's a sitting down practice. And what I found was that my body needed to move. I needed to be out in nature. And so these labyrinths that are all around the world, and you can find them at labyrinthlocator.com. You'll have one in your neighborhood for sure, or nearby at least. It was a walking meditation that was so supportive because my body could sway through the paths and clear my mind. And because our bodies are 70% water, you know, the science behind it is just this settling of our physical bodies and this meditative state that is very, very supportive to this process of getting quiet, clearing out the clutter of your life, and being able to feel who you truly are.
I'll tell you a quick story. Another thing that I learned from that retreat right after I was injured was TM, Transcendental Meditation. And while I never really put it into practice, I kept it as a kind of a tool in my kit that came in very handy a number of times after my injury, after going, you know, I contracted bacterial meningitis almost 4 years after my injury, which is what caused me to go deaf. But it was one of the worst pains of my life. It was this bacteria inside my brain. And there was no amount of medication that the doctors could give me while I was in the hospital bed to mitigate the pain. So I turned to TM, and it was the only way I could dial down the pain was through meditation. It was almost, I mean, it was definitely even surprising the power we have in our own minds to control pain as well as other aspects of our physical forms. So I just thought I'd mention that meditation is incredibly powerful. I just need to better incorporate a form of meditation, maybe in a daily practice or more routine practice at the very least.
Well, I'm sorry that you went through that painful time. And what a blessing that you had this training that came at the perfect time, really, to help you.
Well, all of our experiences, in one way or another, neither completely good nor completely bad. So, in certain ways, my difficult marriage, your difficult marriage, was also a blessing. Uh, my injuries, my illnesses, the experiences, then they direct us down a path. They form, who we become. They help shape the characters we embody. So I'm I don't lament my injuries, my illness. That of course there are many things that um, I would love to do again or to experience with eyesight or hearing. But I certainly appreciate my life as it is and wouldn't be able to had it not been for my experiences. So, okay, we're moving along in this labyrinth. There's paths, physical, mental decluttering. What's next?
What I noticed, Aaron, in my notes was that the next path that I took was healing my emotions. Not only feeling my emotions,
Mm-hmm.
but processing my emotions, because no emotion can actually heal unless you've processed it. What I also noticed with my patients and then my coaching clients was that our emotions become stuck in our bodies They become burdens. They weigh us down. That's what becomes disease. That's what becomes tension. That's what becomes pain. And they weaken our health. And I saw that over decades of being in healthcare. So we can choose to hold on to them or let them go, to process them or stay attached to them. But the letting go of them frees us. And that free state is that space I'm talking about, getting back to that free space.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't want to carry those heavy, heavy emotions anymore. This is not just about cleaning and clearing. This is about a path to becoming as light as you possibly can. And lightening up my emotions and freeing them was one of the most important paths on this journey. And that took a lot of therapy, coaching, reading, again, another rabbit hole that I was so committed to because, like I said, this is my one God-given life and I honor it at the highest level. And I really wanted to be free of this burden of emotions that I was carrying. So that was the fourth path.
Yeah, it's important to recognize the emotions. To be able to point a finger at the emotion and figure out what that emotion is telling us. But to strictly focus on the emotion alone, to linger on it, it's just like it's not to recognize the cause, but the effect, right? So to just dwell on sadness is to lead to depression without the underlying cause. To dwell on fear, worry leads to anxiety, which is counterproductive. But pain, sadness, fear, these things, they're like pain. It's like the smoke detector, right? To just the smoke detector's going off, you don't just stand there and stare at the smoke detector going, that is really loud and I don't like it. You got to figure out what's causing it to go off and deal with whatever's causing the smoke. So when you got quiet, you're recognizing these emotions, you're more able to step back and determine what these emotions are. Is that right?
That's right. And where they originated from.
Right.
If you had a mother or a father who was judgmental and now you've taken on that same pattern and you're judgmental, then you could be like, well, why am I so judgmental or critical of people? But in that quiet reflection and that consciousness of knowing I'm judgmental and I don't like who I am being that, you can go back in time and say, where did I learn that? And make meaning of your life and then change that behavior. And this is all done in the quiet, in the space.
Which in turn quiets the emotions. And you can feel more free to move forward in a more positive direction. So now at least we're on the path to mastering our emotions. What happens next?
Well, this now takes a turn. This is in the path of the labyrinth where there's twists and turns. This now turns us in a whole other direction. We've gone in, clean and cleared out our bodies, our environments, our minds, and our emotions. And now the fun kind of begins. And now is the path of grounding. All of this newfound knowledge, all of this new you into the ground and grounding yourself and supporting yourself in a way and feeling sturdy, walking through life in a way that you haven't before. I mean, imagine doing all of that and how good you would feel and how much you'd want to really embody that newfound you up to this point. And so it's really about grounding all of that so that you feel it in every cell of your body, this new way of being and showing up in the world. And it's all very exciting. So this is the path of grounding it all and starting to really live it in a new way.
Sounds like a lot of work. But so you're now that you've reduced that noise, you're getting quiet. The clutter in your physical, your body, your physical environment, your mind, your emotions, all of that, and that gets you to the point where you can actually recognize who you are. Then what?
When you can recognize these new ways of being and operating in the world, you begin on the next path of being able to dream again. The dreams that you might have put aside because you were helping other people with their dreams, the dreams that you've let go because they were too big, or you might have had them when you were younger and naive. They all start coming back, and even new ones.
Those dreams that you used to have before reality sets in, or all of our restrictions, both external and internal, were placed on us, or we placed on ourselves. The freedom to dream about doing something a lot bigger than what's within our immediate grasp, or between iPhone notifications.
The dreams get so big that you can't even believe it. Why? Because you have clean and cleared and created space for the biggest things to come into your life. It's the most exciting thing we can do for ourselves, and especially as entrepreneurs. We always have the big ideas and then we get scared, or we don't implement, or something gets in our way, or distraction takes over. As entrepreneurs, we are creatives. We have to keep this space that I'm talking about on a regular basis. I know it sounds hard. I know it sounds like it could be a lot of work, but you can really do baby steps with this, so that all of these steps that I'm talking about today, you can experience this in one day. You can choose one healthy thing to eat. You can choose one thing to declutter in your home. You can choose one small thought that's not negative but positive. You could choose to look at one emotion. I mean, it can happen in an instant if you just know these paths and these steps. And so the dreams come in like they flood you, because they're able now to reach you. Whereas before, there was too much in the way. So if you are an entrepreneur, if you are a creative, if you are a visionary, or if you want to be any of those things, these are the paths to have that be your reality. The dreams will come not only at nighttime, but they'll also come throughout the day. And then the next path, the path right before you get to the center, is what colors in all these dreams. And that's your intuition that comes back online.
Intuition?
Intuition.
Information.
Intuition, especially for women. Intuition helps particularly women come alive, because it's what keeps us safe. And in fact, it's what keeps us all safe, is knowing that we have that connection to keep us safe, to hear that message that says, don't go left, but go right. Don't talk to that person, walk away. But when you are in this state that we're talking about, in terms of dreaming, in terms of being a visionary, in terms of creating for your life, we have to know the details around those visions, because they are so grand. They will come in so big that you will almost be scared of what you are envisioning for your life. And so intuition helps us feel safe in that experience, because it will tell us exactly the steps to take to make that dream come true.
That's that leads me back to that what you mentioned about the fear of the unknown. Right? All of this noise, the clutter, all of that can also give us a a sense of security, false though it might be, uh, a, a, a false safety, right, in the busyness. Whereas when you reduce the clutter, the noise, allowing yourself to dream, that that can be scary too. The, there can be that sense of fear of stepping into the unknown. There's a vulnerability there. But I suppose this intuition is the real security, the real uh, safety in understanding yourself and having agency over your life's decisions, right? Being able to control the controllables.
Well, you said it better than I could. You have said this better than I could. So thank you. And you're right. That all that noise, all that clutter is a false sense of safety. And we're trying to get to the truest sense of who we are. So when you dream big, when you have those intuitive thoughts that are guiding you, you begin to trust them, because again, you're not only seeing them just in the labyrinth, but you're seeing signs outside the labyrinth that are confirming that you're on the right path. So it's when you get into the flow of this lifestyle, you are being guided, you are being taken care of in ways that you will see and trust, because they're so obvious. And then you get to the center and you feel whole again. You feel not lost the way you came in, but you feel found. You feel like you know what life means, and you know your place in the world, and you know the right actions to take to move your life forward in the way that you're meant to. We all have a unique soul's journey. And I believe that that's the purpose of this life, is finding out what that is. And this is the journey to doing that. And when you get to the center of the labyrinth, it's like your soul meets you there. A part of you that is the true you, but that you've disconnected from. And that's why you have felt lost this whole time. What you've been missing is yourself this whole time. And after walking these paths, you get to the center and you feel the most truest you can ever feel in your whole entire life. And you will never go back to living the same way again. You can't go back. And you take all of this wonderful new way of being and you traverse back out that labyrinth, back out into the world again. A whole new person, the person that you're meant to be, with the gifts that you've discovered about yourself.
I don't know. That just reeks of effort. However, it sounds like one of the best things you can do for yourself and the world. Uh, I really appreciate you explaining your process, the labyrinth as a literal method for meditation and finding quiet, and for the figurative lesson you've given us today. I think it's a great place to start bringing it in. So why don't we go to the countdown to impact? This is 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person who have all made an impact in your life.
Okay, 3 quotes. Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Buddha. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with 1 step. In our case, it's the labyrinth, Lao Tzu. And joy is not in things, it is in us. Richard Wagner. 2 books, The Gift of Change, Marianne Williamson, and Gifts from the Sea, Anne Morrow Lindbergh. One person.
That's right.
I would have to say my parents. That's 2.
Well, it was supposed to be 3 books and 2 quotes, but since we're just rewriting all the rules, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, this is work. This is work, but it's the most important work that we will ever do in our lifetime. So if you have the courage, if you value life, if you value your vitality, if you value making an impact in the world and all the abundance that can come from that, then this is your work.
Well, then, before I ask you how others can get a hold of you, is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up? Anything we missed?
This has been so thoughtful, so detailed with you today. I don't think you've missed anything, Aaron.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. So if anybody else wants to learn more about you, find your book, find more about what you're doing today, where should they go?
Everything is at ElaineGlass.com. You can find the book, Get Quiet. You can find the retreats that I lead, and everything else is right all in that one place.
Spectacular. All right, final question. What does living a life of impact mean to you?
Being as peaceful and clear on the direction of my life as I possibly can be.
Wonderful. Well, Elaine, thank you so much once again. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I wish you all the best.
As have I. Thank you.